you to Vandergraaf for sponsoring this Road to Recovery video. Visit their website to learn how the Grizzly Drive drum motor increases the reliability and reduces the cost of ownership of conveyor systems.
Hi there, I'm Kevin Yannick with Pit and Quarry Magazine. We've got with us today David Chereb. David, of course, writes our aggregate forecast column each month in the magazine. David, thanks for joining us once again.
Glad to be here, Kevin.
David, well, let's start off talking about the infrastructure bill that we've seen pass the Senate. It's the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. It's a big bill. There's a lot of pieces and components to it, so there's a lot to unpack there. But I want to get your first impressions, your takeaways on this bill, and what do you think it ultimately means for aggregate demand as you kind of look at the big dollar amount and some of the breakdowns within?
Well, it's good things for aggregates, but it's so interesting that now that it's back in the House, or it's in the House, and there's some controversy, some push and shove, but I wouldn't bet against Nancy Pelosi getting what she wants on this thing. But one way or the other, it looks like we're going to have an infrastructure bill. Not certain, but it looks like we're going to have it. And it's interesting. It's a big bill, but if you have to parse down and try to find out the aggregates part, it's not that big. And the thing I find interesting about today's process with the legislature is that at the last minute, somebody can go in and just pencil in a new number. And so the number that was 100 billion becomes 120. And that's what lobbyists are all about. It's just penciled in an initial, and whatever you vote on, that's the bill. So I suspect we're going to get pretty good funds for infrastructure, but spread out over 10 years, it's not that big a bump. And we'll probably start to, assuming it passes, we'll probably start, this is mid 2021, so it's really not going to be till 2023 until we see the impact. And I suspect aggregates consumption will be about 15% higher by 2024, partly due to the recovery and partly due to this infrastructure bill.
And so don't expect anything this year, obviously, and maybe not even next year, saying David, but down the road, we're going to see some nice percentage impacts on demand and growth.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's going to be combined with other things, the housing changing and finally recovery and non-residential, that should add to things. The thing I find interesting, we have to remember, infrastructure is probably about 50% or so of aggregates consumption. And, you know, in our models, residential is about 25%. And we have residential increasing quite a bit this year and next year, but then it levels off and starts down a little bit. And partly it's the high prices and, in our models, higher interest rates by then. So you don't get the push from residential, you get a little bit of push from non-residential, but the big engine then going forward is going to be infrastructure. So pretty good outlook, not as much as I had hoped when they first started talking about it, because they've watered it down somewhat. And as you've alluded to, and we've talked about before, what is infrastructure? And somehow seemed obvious, right? Well, infrastructure is roads and bridges. Well, not so much today. So we have to be careful. So good, solid impact on aggregates, demand, and consumption over the next 4 years, not a boom.
Thank you to Vandergraaf for sponsoring this Road to Recovery video. Visit their website to learn how the Grizzly Drive drum motor increases the reliability and reduces the cost of ownership of conveyor systems.